What is up, everyone? Today we have a 200cc Warrior. It's a Warrior 200, and a couple of things to go over. One, there's this one. It's also its buddy. I've already done this, what we're going to do this one to the buddy. Basically, the owners of these, they said they can go 25, maybe 30 if it's downhill. But they want to go like 35, 40. So we have a couple options. One, I told them we could change the gearing, but when you change the gearing, you only have a certain amount of revolutions on the engine. The gearing, all it's going to do is shift that power to either going fast or accelerating fast. That's really about it. It's not like this has a transmission. So we have that working against us. Two, this, for whatever reason, generally I would see them run at 36, but the highest I can get this up to, at least according to my TAC, is 3,400 RPM. Now, right here was a cover, but because I'd wanted to verify this order of the spacer and everything on the clutch and making sure I got everything right, I took it off. It's just 4 bolts, so there's a cover around here somewhere. In fact, it looks exactly like that one. So that's what the cover looks like. So I told him we could do this. He likes the way it accelerates. We can remove the governor, and when doing so, we're going to have to probably upgrade the carb. And I would recommend doing a couple other things. If you want to do a whole lot more power, you could do a whole lot more. You know, the amount of modifications you can do on this is pretty significant. However, the problem comes around being that the more you do, the more it's going to cost. And do you really want to be driving 75 with this motor on these bikes? Probably not. Do you really want to build it? He doesn't want to build it. These are already expensive enough. He just wants to go a little bit faster. So what we came up with is this. We're going to remove the governor. We are then going to install a 22 millimeter Mikuni. At least technically it says it is. I'm kind of doubting though on it. And that should get us to about 5,500 RPM. You don't really want to go too much faster than that because it is going to be stock flywheel, stock rod, stock everything besides the carb. Another bottleneck we have going on here. I would also recommend we do some head work, but he doesn't want to remove the exhaust. He likes the tone it has. He likes how quiet it is. He doesn't want to have a fart cannon. I can understand that, and I'm totally okay with that because he's also a neighbor. Having 2 of them driving around all the time, not very easy to make videos around that. So he wants to leave that. So it's really not a whole lot, in my opinion, that we need to do to the head, because when you go through the head to do some work, you're pretty much increasing flow, but then you're increasing it in the head to then just have a bottleneck in the exhaust. So we're not going to do that. Having said all that, like I said, there's a whole lot more you can do. This is what he wanted to do, so that's what we're going to do. And I don't suspect this is going to be unsafe. I don't really see it being, a potential problem, especially since he's like, I don't really want to go that much faster. He just wants to be able to go maybe 30, 35 when he needs it for short distances. Not going to be cruising down the road at 35 all the time. Generally keep it around 25 to 30. At that speed, these modifications are going to be barely even noticed. So first thing that we did, or I did, is I got my TAC. Reason why I got my TAC out is I wanted to see what RPM that clutch engaged in, because if you've ever tried to start one of these modified engines with a Mikuni or any of the carburetors of that style, it could be a little troublesome. So you kind of want to have a little bit of a faster idle than right now. Right now idle is about 1400. 2400 is where the clutch starts to engage. So I have the red one set to about 2000. It's easily starting, starts very easy, and the clutch is not engaged. So there's that. First things first, we're going to take off all the covers. I'm already ahead on that one. The cover I need to remove is this exhaust shield, chain guard, or chain shield. And then from there, we need to take off the clutch, the chains, pretty much everything. And then after that, I'm going to disconnect the wiring, because this does have like an alternator almost. It's on the inside of the flywheel for the light. This does not have a battery, does not have a starter. So I need to disconnect the wiring and the cable. Another thing about this, when you do this cable, it's a completely different style system for this throttle. You need to get, a new cable. One that's going to be compatible with Mikuni style carburetor. So we need to remove the cable entirely. And once we have the cable, the wiring, and all the chains and everything disconnected, and the guards, we'll be able to remove the engine and get to work. I'm not going to show 100% of everything, because this is, unless you have this exact bike, it's really, it's going to be different for all of them. So I will record it, but I'm just going to probably do, let's say, montage. Couple things. One, to remove that throttle cable, you need to have a Phillips head screwdriver. You're basically going to release that screw. The cable is going to slide out. I think it is screwed in there, so you might have to remove the cable from the handle first. That way you can easily twist it out. And then at that point, that's it. Disconnect the wiring, and then we'll go ahead and do the bolts. I'm not going to show that part because, well, not going to. There's 4 on the bottom. 1/2 inch, undo them, pull the engine out. Next time you see this, the engine's going to be out, and we'll start. Something I didn't mention is I'm going to be putting all the fasteners and everything back in their appropriate locations, because it's just a lot easier. You don't have a pile of bolts everywhere. Unless the pieces are coming off, I'm going to put them back where they are. That's why you see all these 5/16 or 8 millimeters on there, and the same thing with those 10 on there. It's going to go back onto the actual engine itself. It's not going to interfere with our process. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll bring you back. Something that is both irritating and annoying about this machine is some of it's 8 millimeter, some of it's 10. So there's that. We are going to remove, we don't need this carburetor anymore. We're going to remove this plate. That's also excess engine parts we don't need now. It's a weight savings. That is going to go into a box full of parts for the guy and his wife if he wants them. If he doesn't, then I'll keep them. I mean, this engine runs just fine. It's just governed. Something I am going to be doing is, this is a cheap Chinese plug. I hate those plugs. I'm going to be removing that pretty fast. And put a good NGK plug in there. Mainly for the fact that this is already going to be revving up a little higher. my trust in those plugs is pretty low. I can't imagine it's going to be doing very well at those speeds. I think they're made pretty much only for that. Granted, maybe they're not. Maybe online they say they're good for like who knows how many RPMs. Maybe they're not even saying how many RPMs. But I'm going to be removing that. Coil appears to be fine. I don't suspect that to be a problem. Could be, but I don't suspect it. That's also useless. And take this carb off. Now, when you do this, this does have, how much fuel does it have in there? Almost full. That's how much fuel is in here. You're going to want to clamp the fuel line off. So there's going to be 4 bolts to take the cover. So I'm going to go over this next part real quick here while I remove the carb. This is potentially not needed. I would argue that it is needed for the fact that when we remove the governor, I don't want any part of the governor left over in there. Not a single piece. This is usually 4 bolts. I had to take one off because that was mounting, what was it? The ground for the kill. So I'm only going to be removing 3. Anyway, I'm going to be removing the entire governor. If you don't want to, you don't have to, but you can leave the shaft. That's probably okay. The problem is, we'll get to it when we get to it. The shaft has the most difficult little clip to get removed in order to remove the actual governor. So to make it easier on ourselves, we're going to remove the recoil assembly, put that off to the side. Then we're going to remove the tank, which yet again, those are 8mm. These are going to be 10, I'm sure. Yeah, 10. Assuming they do that so they kind of look a little bit more like a Honda. I would imagine 8 is probably cheaper to make, less material. Kind of like that airline that saved how much money removing an olive, even though I'm pretty sure that story is pretty much useless and just a story. But it sounds good, so I'm going to say that that's also the same reason. As long as it sounds good. These we need to keep. We are going to be needing those. Probably helps if you see most of this, huh? The 10s I've been talking about were right here. Let's remove the tank. That's just going to make all this a lot easier. We don't have to worry about fuel dumping everywhere. Now that we have the recoil off, removing the tank is a whole lot easier. Because the fuel line, it's kind of captured by it a little bit. Let's put this over on the bottom, next to the recoil. Okay. Next, we are going to remove this governor setup. If I could find my 10mm. Here we go. You need to stop moving the engine around. These springs are useful. These nuts are useful. Governor arm, not so much. At least I don't find to be replaced that often. Theoretically, technically, all you would, if you really wanted just a little bit more speed, could mess with those springs a little bit. Let me show you. See how this spring was in number 3 hole? The farther away you go, the more tension, so you can get a little bit more out of it. I just don't like anything to do with that because the likelihood of something bad happening is a little bit higher. The governor in this is kind of trash. It's just plastic. Granted, so is the cam. That's a completely different story though. I think this is a 15/16 or 24 or something. Let's see. Or 13/16. Yeah, that's close enough. Something I should also mention is I've already removed the oil. So the oil is gone. Need this at a later point in time. That is not trash. We are going to put that back on a little bit off. Here's the part where no one likes to see this next part. I'm going to remove the flywheel. Doing this method, I probably don't need the actual bolt on there, but if for any reason my air hammer decide to get a little squirrely, that's a good little protection. Maybe a crowbar. Yet again, I know this is probably not the best way, yada 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 yada. At the end of the day, I'm the one doing it. Putting a little pressure. Maybe not enough pressure. Okay, I need to find a good prying spot. That's not a very good prying spot. I'm gonna mess with this. Finally. Whew. But it's not damaged, so we're going to take this off, put this off to the side. That's what we need to have access to. So I think the next thing we're going to want to do is this. I want to take these studs off. Actually, no. It might become useful when it's tipped over on its side. Kind of help protect some of the protectables. Let us remove. Now, like I said, I drained the oil, but you never get all of it, especially since I used a pump. My 10mm was around here, that'd be great. Oh, that's just aggravating. Where did that little thing go? Fell on the floor when I was using the air hammer. And again, those I put back because I just don't want to carry them around. Cover your ears. These, however, I'm not going to put back because that would be a giant pain. For this, we're going to want something very soft. Like hammer-wise, rubber, plastic, something. This is plastic. I do have a new gasket for it, by the way. So, like I said, plastic, everything. But this is the governor arm. Well, what the governor arm connects to. When this spins, this will move up and down, and the weights due to centrifugal force will push this little shaft up and down, moving that. That's the part that we need to remove because we don't want this to be over revving I mean, it's a plastic. I mean, what can you say about that? So we want to remove that. I'm going to take I've done this before. Let's see if it will work. Don't really want to use like a Dremel or a grinder, but I'm just going to use a big snip and see if I can't just cut this arm off. The reason why I'm doing that is, one, it's useless now. Two, it's going to make it a whole lot easier to remove. Okay, I'm going to have to use my body as leverage here. Excuse me. Cover your eyes. Whew. That was not easy. I think I farted a little bit. Anyway, so now we need something to kind of push it through. We want to make sure it's not in the way of anything. It appears like it's not. Get like a little punch and use our hammer. There it is. It's removed. Well, not yet. Now it is. Something is funny though. On there is embossed HF. Coincidentally, those are the initials for Harbor Freight. Coincidence, you say? Maybe. So, now that that's done, we need to... I thought there was one more piece in there. There is one more piece in there. That's weird. Does this governor already break? That's supposed to be on top. It's supposed to be on top right there with those weights. That's very odd. Well, either way, it's going off to the side. So now comes the fun part of putting this up somewhere so we don't have a whole lot of oil drippage Actually, I'm going to drip all that oil as much as I can out over the oil disposal area I have. And I'll bring you back. Reason why we took the flywheel off is because of this. This is that pin I was talking about, or the rod that's really difficult. Probably going to shake, but be careful. I'm just going to hit it out, and then I'll show you that, because you're just going to shake around like a hula girl. This is that pin I was talking about, that clip. Try doing that with no room. Not very easy. The governor. There's also a washer down there we need to take out because we don't want to forget it. See? So that's trash now. But as I'm sure you're imagining, we now have 2 additional holes than we had originally. That's not good. So the solution for that is this. I have 2 lengths of 1/4 inch bolts. Excuse me, that's the wrong one. Oh, no, that's the right one. Now, for whatever reason, I mean, this is a much finer thread, so I'm going to be tapping 2 different sizes. This was in the wrong spot, by the way. I did not, these are supposed to be the same, just actually now noticing. But I'm going to tap the hole on the top where the governor was before, right there, where the linkage was before, whatever, right there, and then also down in there. When you do this, you have to be careful not to get any shavings in the engine. If you do, you have to clean the engine. That might require you to take the rod out, pretty much disassemble the whole thing. I recommend putting a clean shop rag down in there, and that usually can keep most of it out, and then take compressed shop air and blow through it. Look at it. If you see a speck, keep blowing it through. Don't blow it through the top or the other outside. You don't want to blow it in, you want to blow it out. I'm going to do that because watching people tap is like a special type of torture. If you're going to be tapping anything, aluminum is where it's at. It's definitely a whole lot easier. I'm just going to say that right now. So this is red silicone, as I'm sure you're aware. I like to put silicone on the bolts before I put them in, because over time oil can weep through, and I don't like that. So I put silicone. Why red, you ask? Well, good question. Very scientific reason why. Hard to explain, but let's try. It was the one that was available on my counter, and it should be fine. So moving on, let us tighten those bad boys down. I think these are 7/16, and they are. Because it is aluminum, and I just freshly tapped them. My taps aren't exactly machinist grade, so I can imagine they're a little squirrely. I'm just gonna put them down with my hand wrench, or hence that way I'm not use the impact. They don't need to be deathly tight either, just enough so debris doesn't go in, oil does not come out. Next, I'm going to see what we have along the lines of just junk still on the block from the old gasket. A little carb cleaner on a towel. And clean the surface. I remove any and all oils. because we're not going to be using any silicone. I do have a gasket, but this is just generally a good idea. I suppose you don't have to do this. I mean, the gasket that came off of it looked to be fine, but I already have one, and to me it seems like a good idea to do this. It just erases one of those things. Am I the only one that when you leave you kind of get paranoid? Did I lock the front door? Well, you probably did, and it's probably no problem, but you're still paranoid about it. This is one way for me to not be paranoid about it. I'm not gonna make it perfectly clean, but I'm gonna spend a little time removing that gasket. Let's see if it wants to be friendly. Parts of it do. Sometimes a small screwdriver is a real big help in situations like this. Yeah, you don't need to see me do this. I'm going to remove the gasket and then we'll put the new one on. Okay, both surfaces are now clean, and the new gasket, I sprayed something called high tack on. High tack is kind of like gasket glue in a way. I like putting high tack on this because it kind of makes sure that there's no problems with sealing. Now, if you are suspecting you have to go back in, maybe later you think you're going to change the cam out or change the rod or, you know, something, don't do that. It's going to make it a little harder to, right on. It's going to make it a little harder to take off, and you won't be able to save it. At least I've never been able to save it after using high tack. I'm going to put the head bolts, or these the sump cover bolts, back on, and then I need to look up the torque spec first, but I have an appointment, so I'm going to let this cure overnight. I don't believe you have to, but I usually do like to let it cure for at least a day, just to make sure. But just in case, if you do need to do this immediately, you don't have to. So I'm going to look up the head bolt torque specs. Not the head bolt, I keep saying this. I'm going to look up the torque specs for these, and then I will bring you back tomorrow. Got everything torqued down. Can't really find anything for this specific engine, but 200 inch-pounds, roughly 17 foot-pounds ish, is what a Honda GX200 calls for, and that's technically what this is based off of, so I just went with that. If it's a little higher, yeah. If it's a little lower, I'm sure it's fine. But when you do that, also just go and you don't just do it one at a time. Do one, go on the opposite end, do another one, so on and so forth. So our new carb will not need these studs. We're going to take them off. So these are the nuts that go on holding the carb. One goes on backwards, other one goes on forwards, backwards first. This is one of the easiest ways to do this, assuming you have a 10 millimeter. And for whatever reason, someone, I think it was Instagram, had a real big issue with me using this method to take these posts off. He just wanted me to use like a pair of vice grips. Like, well, yeah, that's nice if you want to mar the surface. That's not helping me. It needs to be tighter. I don't want to mar the surface. sure now I say that it's going to be difficult. Okay, put some force behind it. There we go. Now that it's almost off, remove those. Marring the surface will potentially make putting the carb on a lot harder. I'd rather not deal with that. Yeah, it just looks unprofessional. Granted, I'm sure using an impact is not a good idea either, but at the same time, I can go to the store and buy these no problem. These posts, however, it's a different story. It's a little bit harder to find. You have to order them probably. I don't want to order them. Granted, right now I don't have to order them because we're taking it off, but still. There we go. I'm going to go grab the carb. This intake gasket is in good condition. I'm not going to worry about it. It did come with a new one, but I don't, it's not ripped, it's not broken. It's in probably better condition than the new one, to be honest. This spacer is not needed anymore. It goes in our pile of excess parts. So when you get this, you receive one of these so it can correctly mount. Suppose it's an intake header. It's a small one at that, but still, that's what it would be considered. This is the part that's kind of annoying. This is probably going to be overkill. I'm going to spray the surface of this with high tack. It's not needed majority of the time, but I just want to make sure there's no vacuum leaks. Vacuum leaks on this type of thing can be very dangerous. I mean, technically it could be dangerous for everything, but especially with this type of modification we're doing, because if the idle is really, really high, you are just asking for a problem. Potentially you could engage the clutch just out of idle, and if you're not expecting it, you can fall, it can run over you, hurt yourself, everything. So don't do that. Making sure it goes on the right way. And this doesn't have to be super tight either. It should be tight, but you don't have to death grip it. Let's see if I can reach in one of these. I don't know why, but I'm missing one. Probably the one that I need too. That's usually how this works. Oh, no. Very good. Yeah, that's not going to work. So I'm just going to tighten this up and then I'll be right back. Now that's done, we have these, which will have a nut on the back. We're going to put them through the holes on the carb. This, for whatever reason, I need to screw in. Tad bit of an oversight, I think. Whatever. And remove that hose to kind of make it easier for us to work. We'll put it back later. So please note that there's no gasket, there's an O-ring. That O-ring, because we don't have a gasket, it needs to be seated to a very clean surface as well as a level surface. So if there is like a gouge or dirt on this, then clean it, resurface it, whatever you need to do. You do not, yet again, vacuum leak, you do not want a vacuum leak. on a mini bike. I mean, technically you don't want a vacuum leak on anything, but on a vacuum leak on a, I don't know, a lawnmower, in my opinion, probably not going to be that much of an issue, except for just going to be a little bit of an irritation. Generally, you're not sitting on top of a lawnmower, unless it's a riding lawnmower, in which case, if your wheels aren't on, it shouldn't be a problem anyway. Evenly tightened. That's the key here. It's a little uneven, but it should be fine. I don't think that's going to be a problem. But it does have to be tight, and I feel like that's... So now comes the time when we have to discuss the type of carburetor we have. It's not like the one that came off of it. It's kind of a pin on here. This pin, depending on how much fuel you want to be consumed or used during operation, can be adjusted. So there's a clip here, and there's little slots. The little slots you can just put the clip on. The higher up, the less fuel. The lower down, the more fuel. Just kind of moves this down. This end of this pin is tapered, so it will never... Just this adjustment itself will regulate the fuel. You can also do it by jetting. Me personally, I think the jet is maybe a little bit too small, but I haven't ridden the other one yet, so I don't know. So we put our pin in, and this clip is a real pain, but put our clip in. The key part is that the cable is going to have to go through this slot, and if you put the clip in like this, it's just going to get bound up. You need to have this, or potentially even that, in this groove, because if you don't, then like I said, you're just going to be binding up the cable and it's going to cause problems. Okay, it's going to take a little concentration on that part, so I'll be right back. Now that's done, we take our top with our cable and push this through. Take our spring, put that through. I'm doing it now because it's a whole lot easier without the pressure of it being on the handle. There's a circular hole, goes through, and that's it. Now we put this in. This is the idle adjustment screw. This is the idle ramp. So we want to put it right there. It only fits in one way, so it's not like you can mess it up, but I suppose if you really shoved it in there, you could. That spring is important too. If you forget it, you're not going to have an idle return. Well, I guess it could also be one on your handle, but I doubt it. Now, when you pull this, you should hear and see the slide go up and down. And I do. Perfect. Now, I'm going to put the flywheel on, and the tank, connect the fuel. The fuel line goes right here. And we should be set. If you need to because there's you can adjustment on right here, so depending on if you have like a little bit of an angle, you can make this, you know, whatever angle you need to a certain degree. The plate on the mini bike is more or less level, so I'm not going to worry about it, but you want the carb bowl to be level when you install it. So when you're done installing it, you might have to loosen these, put it back on. So I'm going to put the engine in, then I will bring you back for the handle part. But like I said, I'm just going to put the fuel line on, I replaced this plug with a good NGK plug, which I think I have one. Yeah, I do. Here we go. NGK BPR, yeah, 6ES. I was wondering if it's a 5 or a 6. Replace that, take that crap out, put it in then, and then I'm not going to connect the clutch because I want to see if it runs, I want to see if the idle is, all that. So I'm probably not going to show those bits, but I will show you once it's done, and then kind of the tuning aspect of it. I got everything installed except for the clutch and the chain and all that. Right now it's only the engine, and I want to make sure that the idle set's okay. And if we need to take anything apart, it's a whole lot easier than having to start all over. The kill wires are on. The throttle cable's set. As you can tell, the air filter provided is not the greatest, but whatever. Fuel is on. Oil is full. I also put a zinc additive in there whenever you do any type of modification. In fact, any small engine, to be honest, probably needs, when you change your oil, to add a zinc additive, but it's a little bit in there. Excuse me, man. Yeah, I think the only thing we have to do now is to, I need to level the carb a wee bit. It's not that bad, but a wee bit. And give it a pull and see what happens. So that should be on. I don't remember if choke is up or down. All I can do is look at the other one. Choke is up. Okay, choke is on. Like I said, this is only going to be the engine. So far, so good. Attack. Showing about 1530, 1520, 1510, something like that. 1500, let's just say that. It's not bad. Let's give it, let it warm up a little bit longer. I can tell what I want to do right now is I want to richen the idle up a little bit. As you heard, it was popping a little at the end, but you know, we just revved it up, so that's not too uncommon. But popping usually means a leaner condition, and I can tell when it goes back down it probably needs a little bit more fuel. So I'm gonna go ahead and adjust that. This is the mating surface. There's a little screw in the back. Pushing it in leans it out. Unscrewing it makes it richer. So let me do the richer part. So I'm going to turn it out quarter, maybe half a turn, somewhere in between there. I think that's pretty good. Like I said, it's about 2400 and we'll start to engage the clutch, and you don't want to see black smoke come out of the exhaust at the same time. So I think we're at a good richness level and we're not too lean. I don't know if you can see it, but it's just a quick little bloop on the throttle. Got it up to about 5500, and that's kind of where I wanted it. No more than that. It's really kind of the max I would think that this is going to be a good idea for this engine. I'll just put it that way. So what does that mean? So we took this from 3200 RPM going about 25 miles an hour. 5500, granted you shouldn't be running at that speed that entire time. 40 probably. So I think it's a pretty decent adjustment and upgrade. So what do we have in here? Well, we need a new cable and a new carb. The carb and the cable, I believe, came to a total of about $80 or $90, including the air filter. And then from there, gasket kit set for both was $10 each, so $100. And plug $505. Oil, let's say another $5. $110 for this whole thing. That's not bad. For $110, yeah, you could go out and buy like a new engine, Predator engine, or whatever you want, which is practically what this is. It even has HF stamped on it. But at the same point, at the same time, you know, they already have this. It's working good. It had almost no miles on it from what I'm told. I mean, they use it fairly rarely, mainly because it went too slow. And now it's a good running machine, so I'm gonna put the clutch on there. I'm gonna go for a ride, and if I see it's a little bit leaner, well, then I'll make a video on that. I don't have a body cam suit, and I don't really want to drop my camera while riding it, so unfortunately I'm not gonna really show that part. But just know that if it does come where I need to adjust the carb, I will bring you back for a different video. But other than that, if you want to ungovern your mini bike, go-kart, whatever your preferred method of, you know, recreational travel is, this is a good option. It's not, like I said, you could go down a pathway of $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 and just pull out like 22, 23 horsepower from this engine probably. But at the same time, yeah, why? You know? So you could go like 55 down the road. Would you even want to go down the road at 55 on this, or 60, or even 60, 70? Who knows? I don't think I would want to, not on this. So yeah, just know that ideally you could do a whole lot. You could shave the head, port and polish it, get different rocker arms, new push rods, a new flywheel. I mean, the list goes on. The parts you could put on this, I mean, practically the only thing you're keeping is the block, and even then, maybe not. So, yeah, this is a good alternative. It's a good, cheap, inexpensive way to get a little bit of extra power if you don't want crazy gains. So I'm going to leave you at that. If you like what you see, keep watching, subscribe, catch me in my next video. I'll see you later, and follow me on Small Engine 101 on Instagram.